when my daughter-in-law handed me a $3,200 bill in front of 80 guests. She expected me to smile and pay. I smiled all right, but not because I was cornered. Because the receipt in my purse had already decided who was really in control that night. There was a time when I genuinely believed that family meant unconditional support. But when my daughter-in-law, Chloe, handed me that thick white envelope right in the middle of a crowded banquet hall, I finally realized that, to her, family was just a polite word for an open ATM. All 80 guests were staring at me expectantly while the soft background music drifted through the room. They all assumed I was about to gracefully foot the entire bill for my son Julian's big milestone celebration. Chloe smiled so wide her eyes crinkled into tiny slits, and she gave my shoulder a patronizing little pat, like she was doing me a favor. What she didn't know was that tucked safely inside my purse was the receipt proving I'd already paid for nearly everything in that room beforehand. My name is Eleanor. I'm 66, a widow, and I live in a quiet, cozy townhouse just outside of Boston. After losing my husband, I learned that peace of mind is the most valuable asset you can have in your golden years. My son Julian had always been a good kid, but ever since he married Chloe, it felt like he'd completely lost his backbone. Chloe loved putting on a show, especially when someone else was paying for the stage. When she approached me 3 months ago asking me to cover the deposit for the catering and the venue rental, I agreed on the explicit condition that this would be their one and only gift from me. Now, here she was, standing in front of me while the guests offered a polite round of applause, and Julian stared sheepishly at the floor. I opened the envelope with calm, deliberate fingers, no trembling, no rushing. Inside was a detailed, itemized list totaling an extra $3,200 for luxury upgrades Chloe had tacked on without telling me premium champagne, a high-end photo booth, and custom floral arrangements. At the bottom of the page, written in her neat, looping cursive, was a note. "Thanks, Mom, for covering the rest of this for us." Chloe leaned in close, whispering just loud enough for the neighboring tables to overhear. "We knew we could count on you." I looked at her, feeling the icy draft of her entitlement, and knew exactly what my next move would be. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. And I didn't let my expression slip for even a second. At my age, you learn that raising your voice rarely fixes a situation. It usually just tips off the other person. I folded the paper back up neatly, slid it into the envelope, and tucked it into the pocket of my cardigan. "A lovely party," I said softly to Chloe, catching Julian's eye for a brief second before taking a sip of my water. My son immediately looked away, suddenly very interested in his prime rib. He knew exactly what his wife was pulling, but it was simply too uncomfortable for him to stand up to her. The party carried on, but for me, the evening was emotionally over. While everyone else laughed and drank, I quietly ran through my finances in my head. I hadn't just paid for this party. For the past 2 years, I'd been sending Julian $400 a month to help with preschool expenses, weeding and landscaping their yard twice a week, and letting Chloe borrow my SUV whenever she pleased. I had done it all out of love. But love should never be confused with being a doormat. If you don't draw your own boundaries, no one is going to draw them for you. Around 10 o'clock, I quietly slipped out. Julian offered to walk me to my Uber, but I waved him off. On the ride home, I stared out the window at the glowing Boston skyline. The silence of my townhouse welcomed me back like a warm blanket. I sat down at my kitchen island, opened my iPad, and logged into my bank account. It was time to put things back where they belonged. My very first move was to cancel the monthly $400 recurring transfer money meant for the grandkids that usually ended up funding Chloe's trips to the boutique salon anyway. That was just the beginning of my evening, and I felt a deep, productive clarity wash over me. The next morning was a bright, sunny Sunday. Right on cue at 9 o'clock, my phone rang, seeing Chloe's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 full times before picking up, completely relaxed. Her voice sounded a little raspy from the drinks the night before, but she didn't waste any time getting to the point. "Hey, Eleanor, the event coordinator just called. The remaining balance is still outstanding. You kept the envelope last night." "Right." I took a slow sip of my coffee, watered the orchid on the windowsill, and replied in a steady, calm voice, "Yes, Chloe, I have it. And that's exactly where it's going to stay. An absolute." Dead silence hung on the other end of the line for a few seconds before she let out a nervous, irritated laugh. "What do you mean? You need to pay it. We didn't budget for this right now. Julian said you were taking care of it." I sat down at the table. I paid the deposit and the venue rental, exactly as we agreed. I have the receipt right here. You ordered the luxury upgrades, so you pay for them. I am not your personal bank. Chloe's polite facade shattered instantly. "You can't do this. It's incredibly rude. What are people going to think? What people think is none of my concern." I replied evenly. "Furthermore, I just canceled the monthly allowance I've been sending you guys. You're both working adults with good careers. It's time you financed your own lifestyle." I heard her catch her breath. Before she could spiral into a full-blown scream, I added, "Have a wonderful Sunday," and hung up. I set the phone face down, feeling completely free of guilt. It felt incredible to be back in the driver's seat. Still, I knew the trickiest part was ahead. Julian and Chloe still had a spare key to my place, and they used my property whenever it suited them. It didn't take 2 hours before my son's car pulled into my driveway. Watching through the peephole, I saw Julian get out, his shoulders slumped and looking incredibly stressed. The moment the doorbell rang, I opened it. He walked right past me without a greeting, pacing nervously back and forth in the entryway. "Mom, what is going on with you?" Chloe is upstairs crying her eyes out. "You can't just cut us off financially and refuse to pay the venue. We're family." He looked at me with that desperate, pleading face that used to work on me every single time. I didn't even invite him to sit down. "Julian," I said calmly, crossing my arms, "you are both grown adults. You planned a party you couldn't afford and tried to publicly corner me into paying for it to avoid a scene. That was a massive mistake." He began to stammer something about a misunderstanding, but I cut him off with a simple wave of my hand. "Where is my car key?" He blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "The spare key to my SUV, the one Chloe's been driving for weeks. I need it back." "Right now." Julian mechanically reached into his pocket and placed the key on the entryway console. "You're completely overreacting." "Mom." Turning a simple bill into all this drama, I picked up the key and dropped it into my pocket. "It's not drama, Julian. It's a realignment, and starting tomorrow. I won't be doing your yard work anymore either. I hired a local landscaping service to handle my own property, and my free time belongs to me now." He stared at me like he was looking at a stranger. He had no idea this was just a gentle introduction to my new independence, and that I was already planning the next step. First thing Monday morning, a locksmith was standing at my front door. It felt a little uncomfortable changing the locks on my own child, but trust is like a mirror once it cracks. You can piece it back together, but you'll always see the fractures. Chloe had a spare key to my townhouse under the guise of emergencies, but she regularly used it to pop in unannounced to borrow things or raid my pantry while I was out grocery shopping. When the locksmith finished and handed me 3 shiny, heavy new keys, a wave of profound relief washed over me. I packed a small tote bag with all the personal items Chloe had left scattered around my place over the last few months, a few magazines, an expensive hand cream, and some Tupperware containers. Then, I drove over to their house. I knew Chloe was at the office and Julian was working from home. Walking up the driveway, I noticed the overgrown lawn I usually would have mowed by now. Julian opened the door in sweatpants, looking exhausted. I placed the tote bag squarely on the welcome mat and said, "Here are Chloe's things." He looked down at the bag, then up at me. "Aren't you coming in? Chloe wanted to apologize tonight once we got the venue bill sorted out." I gave him a mild, patient smile. "There's nothing to sort out. Julian, the bill belongs to the venue, and the venue belongs to you two. Oh, and one more thing, I changed the locks on my house today. You won't need to swing by when I'm not around anymore." The color drained from his face. "You did what? Do you seriously think we're stealing from you?" I patted his arm gently. "No, but I value my privacy. I'll see you guys for Sunday coffee, but only after Chloe settles that bill. Thank you for spending your time with Quiet Revenge. Every story we share is carefully selected, researched, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team because we believe stories of family, resilience, and quiet justice deserve thoughtful care. We also want to be transparent. AI tools may assist with certain parts of our creative workflow, but every story is guided, checked, and shaped by real people before it reaches you. Because our channel's monetization is currently unavailable, your support helps us continue creating these stories for this wonderful community. If these videos have ever comforted, inspired, or encouraged you, please consider supporting Quiet Revenge with the price of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family. Ko-fi, https://ko-fi.com/Thestry Family. PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/Bapalm/Kanhuangmin. Thank you for being part of our journey. Unsurprisingly, Sunday coffee never happened. Instead, on Thursday evening, I received a novel-length, bitter text from Chloe. She accused me of being selfish, ruining the family dynamic, and neglecting my grandchild. She dropped a passive-aggressive hint that I'd probably be seeing little Avery a lot less if I continued to be so uncooperative. It was a textbook attempt to use emotional blackmail as a weapon. A couple of years ago, a text like that would have had me crying for days. Today, I simply read it once and hit delete. I knew exactly how this game was played. If you react to emotional extortion with panic, the other person wins. So, I did the exact opposite. I booked myself a 3-day weekend getaway at a luxury spa resort in Vermont. It happened to be the very weekend I was firmly scheduled to babysit, because the two of them were supposed to attend a close friend's wedding out of town. I called Julian on Friday morning. "Hi, Julian. Just calling to let you know I'm heading up to Vermont from Friday to Sunday. You'll need to find another sitter for Avery." "What? But Mom, we told you about this 2 months ago. We already bought our tickets." His voice practically cracked under the stress. "I'm sure you did," I replied with absolute serenity. "But since Chloe made it clear she thinks I'm destroying the family, I figured it's best if I give you guys some space to let things cool down. I'm sure you two can manage without me. I hung up before he could argue. As I packed my suitcase, I felt a wonderful sense of anticipation. No running around, no cooking for everyone, just me. A good book, and a sauna. The 3 days in Vermont were absolutely blissful. I hiked through the quiet woods, read by the fireplace, and enjoyed the sprawling breakfast buffet without anyone expecting me to clear the table or pour them a refill. I kept my phone turned off for the vast majority of the trip. When I finally powered it back on Sunday evening aboard the train back to Boston, 15 missed calls lit up my screen, all of them from Julian, along with 2 from an unfamiliar local number. It looked like the event manager had finally realized no money was coming from my direction. I called the unfamiliar number back immediately. A polite gentleman answered. "Hello, this is Eleanor Becker. I'm calling regarding the outstanding balance for the banquet event last weekend." The man let out a massive sigh of relief. "Ah, Mrs. Becker. Finally. Your son mentioned there was some sort of misunderstanding." I cut him off politely but firmly. "Mr. Vance, I paid my deposit in full. The contract for the additional upgrades was signed the night of the party by my daughter-in-law, Chloe Becker. Please direct any formal collections notices exclusively to her. I have no liability here." The manager paused, taking it in. "I see. The signature on the addendum is indeed a Chloe Becker. Understood. In that case, I will forward the billing and collections process directly to her address. Thank you for clarifying. Mrs. Becker." I thanked him for his time and hung up. Now, the boundaries were official and entirely legal. Chloe could no longer hide behind my name. The pressure was building right on her own doorstep, and I was highly curious to see how long her pride would hold up without my checkbook acting as her buffer. 2 whole weeks passed without a single word from either of them. I spent that time catching up with old friends I'd neglected for years, because I was always on call for Julian's household. But on the 3rd Tuesday, Julian called. His voice sounded defeated, completely stripped of his initial defensiveness. "Mom, can we please get together just for a quick coffee, just you and me, without Chloe? Things are getting really bad over here." I felt a brief tug at my heartstrings. He is my son, after all, but I kept my guard up. We met at a quiet little coffee shop downtown. Julian looked pale, with dark circles bruising the skin under his eyes. He confessed that the venue had hired a collections agency, forcing Chloe to drain her personal savings account to pay the bill. To make matters worse, they were now forced to maintain their own massive yard, which was causing nonstop arguments because neither of them had the time or energy to do it. "We just figured you had plenty of money and enjoyed helping us out," he muttered, staring blankly into his phone. I placed my hand gently over his. "Julian, I love helping, but I refuse to be taken advantage of. You mistook my generosity for an obligation. I am your mother, not your housekeeper, and certainly not your credit card." He swallowed hard and nodded. "Chloe feels terrible. She wants to apologize." I pulled my hand back slowly. A forced apology just to smooth things over isn't going to cut it. "Julian, you both need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet once you've figured that out. We can talk about a normal relationship, but the old days are officially over." It took another 4 weeks before Chloe finally worked up the courage to reach out to me directly. Instead of a text, she actually called and asked if she could drop by for a few minutes. I agreed, but made it clear up front that I had a hard stop after 30 minutes. When she walked into my townhouse, the arrogant, smirking woman from the party was completely gone. She held a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and sat very rigidly on the edge of my sofa, compared to her usual self. She seemed almost timid. "Eleanor," she began, keeping her eyes glued to her lap. "I want to say I'm sorry. Handing you that envelope was wrong. I thought you'd just laugh it off and take care of it. We got in over our heads financially, and I panicked and didn't know what else to do. I accepted the flowers, placing them into a vase without over-the-top emotion, and sat down across from her. Chloe, there's a difference between a joke and an ambush. You tried to publicly pressure me, but you've settled the debt with the venue now, correct?" She nodded silently. "Good," I said. "That's a start. But don't expect things to go right back to how they were. The monthly allowance stays canceled. My SUV stays in my garage. If you need help with Avery, I need at least 2 weeks' notice, and you will need to accept a no if I have my own plans." Chloe swallowed hard, looked at me, and finally realized that her usual manipulation tactics carried absolutely no weight anymore. She quietly agreed to the terms. It wasn't some grand, emotional breakthrough, but rather a professional, grounded peace treaty. 6 months have passed since that night at the banquet hall. That white envelope is still sitting in my kitchen drawer, a little souvenir to remind me how crucial it is to say enough before it's too late. My relationship with Julian and Chloe has stabilized, but there's a healthy distance now, honestly. It's better this way. We see each other every 2 or 3 weeks for a casual dinner or a walk through the park. They treat me with a level of respect that was sorely missing before. They know now that my boundaries have teeth. I see my granddaughter Avery regularly, but strictly on my own terms when she's with me. We bake cookies or head to the playground. And I cherish every single second of it because I know that, at the end of the day, I get to return to the absolute quiet and order of my own home. My life feels so much lighter now than it did a year ago. I've learned that looking out for yourself in your later years isn't selfish. It's just wise. It's about protecting the time you have left. Last night, I sat out on my patio with a glass of Pinot Noir, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. Julian had texted me a picture of Avery playing in the backyard he now has to mow himself. I smiled, saved the photo, and set the phone face down on the table. My name is Eleanor. I'm 66 years old, and from here on out, I'm the one calling the shots in my own life. It was a long road to get to this kind of freedom, but every single step was worth it. Thank you for spending your time with Quiet Revenge. Every story we share is carefully selected, researched, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team because we believe stories of family, resilience, and quiet justice deserve thoughtful care. We also want to be transparent. AI tools may assist with certain parts of our creative workflow, but every story is guided, checked, and shaped by real people before it reaches you. Because our channel's monetization is currently unavailable, your support helps us continue creating these stories for this wonderful community. If these videos have ever comforted, inspired, or encouraged you, please consider supporting Quiet Revenge with the price of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family. Ko-fi, https://ko-fi.com/These Three Family. PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPalm/Kanhuangmin. Thank you for being part of our journey.